Let's move on. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the final one. I can promise you this is short time. It's almost half what you had here. So time will be well spent. It's the panel 3, and it's about the role of plastic credits. I told you in the morning we'll have a session on plastic credits and outcome-based financing in national EPR and waste regulations in East Africa. And we have our moderator. Now, our moderator is Vachu, actually, and that's none other than Varun Vitalani from Repurpose Global. Varun, can you hear me? I just want to confirm. If you can unmute and say hello, it would be nice to hear you there. Varun, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Am I
Excellent.
audible though? Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you. We'll be
lovely.
seeing you in a moment. And of course, just before I introduce the speakers of the session, we want in a special way to appreciate 2 partners who have actually as well given a lot of support. And I would ask, once I mention them, to be appreciated with a clap. We want to appreciate KCB, that's the Kenya Commercial Bank, and KPMG, who have really made the support of this particular summit. Please appreciate them with a clap. Makofi tafadhali. Yes, these things are not easy. So thank you, KPMG. Thank you, KCB. So at this moment, let me just very quickly just mention the names of the speakers coming in, and then the moderator will take up the session. We have Sandeep Main, partner, head of private enterprise, KPMG East Africa. Round of applause to Sandeep. Excellent. Yes, there you go. Please come by. Please come by. Yes. You can see Sandeep. Well done. And thank you so much for coming in. We also have Christian, Manager and Supporting Policy and Market Engagement, Vera. And I think Kristen is joining us virtually. I believe she'll be in. You can
Yes,
unlock or let us see. Kristen, are you there? Just to hear that you can hear us.
I am here. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. That was a nice way of bringing it in. Judith City Otambo, Head Corporate and Regulatory Affairs at KCB. I don't know whether she's here or she's joining us virtually as well. Judith, if you can hear me, can you say hello?
So joining in on behalf of Judith, this is Charlotte. I am here from KCB.
Excellent. Thank you, Charlotte. And then finally, we have Davina Ngay, Program Manager at the Flip-Floppy Project. Let's appreciate Davina as well. Please, Davina, please come. Davina is here, live and kicking, so please come by here. So everybody else is seated just virtually, you understand? So there you go. And so moderator, over to you, Varun, to take us through this session. You have about an hour. Let's go.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all in Kenya. But good morning and good afternoon to the other audience from across the world. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Varun Vitlani. I work as Senior Manager Strategic Partnerships at Repurpose Global. And I'm based in India, currently dialing in from New York, however. So it's really a good morning for me. I am actually, before I start, I'd like to thank the organizers and specifically, the African Legal Network, Taka Takan Mali, and the Flip Floppy Project for inviting Repurpose to present here and organize this panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. Also getting started, I can also give you a run through of the flow of this event. So essentially, we will start with a short presentation by myself around Repurpose's work and key findings from the outcomes-based financing report that we co-published alongside our partners, and a general overview of the plastic credits market. Followed by my presentation will be Christine's presentation from Vera, who will speak about the plastic program from Vera and also the plastic credits, what they are, going into the fundamentals of plastic credits and how plastic credits can be applied within regulatory frameworks. And following that, we will go into the remaining 40 minutes for a panel discussion, where I will, of course, introduce the panel briefly. We will take it from there. To get started with my presentation, could we actually change the presentation to the repurpose deck, please? I see this is the Vera presentation. There's also it's a Google slide deck. If it's available already, or I'm
Just
happy
to
to share
confirm,
screen if that's visible.
yeah, I think you share from your end. It's better that way. So we're going to stop sharing from here. So share from your end, so that at least we can have it smoother.
I hope my screen is visible to everyone, the online and the offline audience.
Just one moment. Just go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so Repurpose, essentially we're the world's leading plastic action platform and plastic credit project developer. We're a team of about small team actually, small but mighty team of 70 people all across the world, with leading experts in waste management, sustainability, innovation, and policy and operations. Since our inception in 2017, we've facilitated the recovery of over 30 million kilograms of low-value plastic waste from the nature. And this has also, as a byproduct or a by-benefit, has given access to waste management services to over 1 million people in vulnerable regions. We've been partnering up with industry leaders and industry stakeholders, as you can see on the screen, and we work with about 450 as of now, 450 supporting partners across the globe, which has built a coalition of plastic action um, stakeholders. Through the 6-7 years of our operations, we have created a global network of impact projects that really target the epicenters of plastic pollution. So we've been able to establish about 13 projects in 6 countries since our inception. Um, and even though a lot of our clientele or the consumer side of things are in the global north, all of our projects, as you can see, are present in the global south. And our main focus has remained on setting up waste management infrastructure in the coastal regions of these countries, that you can see on the screen, so as to intervene the leakage of plastics into our oceans. Um, just a smaller initiative under the Repurpose umbrella is the Repurpose Outcomes Lab, which is a new circular consulting practice and a think and do tank. Which is where we partner with global and enterprises and institutions to deliver circular economy programs that benefit the planet and its people. These essentially have like the Repurpose Outcomes Lab essentially has four pillars, as you can see on the screen, which is strategy and analysis, where we help global corporates with you know, plastic footprint assessments, waste management protocols, circularity program designs. We also, of course, work on project deployment to deliver measurable environmental and social outcomes. The third sort of pillar is where we support with capacity building for promising solutions and making them ready for investment support. And finally, we've been able to champion some multi-stakeholder initiatives. One such example is the Innovation Alliance for a Global Plastics Treaty, which I will touch upon a little later during the presentation. Um, But yeah, coming to the problem statement or what the challenge is, I think we're all very much aware of what the problem is, and I think it's very much obvious. There is limited waste management infrastructure, especially in the global south, and also even wherever there is limited the waste management infrastructure available, there are limited environmental or socioeconomic safeguards. There is also a lack of streamlined processes and verification protocols in these waste management projects. Even though these projects are available hyper locally, there is a limited ability to scale, and there is not a consistent investment support for all of these projects, which can really derive strategic outcomes for such projects. Which is where I think the repurpose, and of course, alongside some other partners also present here, have been able to sort of create this mechanism, which is called the outcomes based. This is what we call it internally. It's called the outcomes-based circularity implementation mechanism, which is really based on five key components. One of them is, of course, the measurable environmental outcomes. The second is really our internal impact protocols that have helped us scale and achieve all of the impact that we've created so far. The third is our proprietary digital track and trace technology, which is called Retrace. The fourth is essentially intersectional impact at our core. And finally, we ensure there is high integrity quality assurance. Um, if I were to, put it in very simple terms, this is the sort of process we follow for any project that we establish. So we, of course, start with a waste management baseline in the specific region to look at what the status quo is. And accordingly, we start designing a solution and deploy the necessary resources for an intervention for our project, which ultimately leads to waste prevention outcomes through the interventions that Repurpose and its partners has been making. And in the process, I think there are three direct beneficiaries, but of course, many more indirect beneficiaries. These include grassroots level innovators or waste management projects on the ground that we work with. The second is waste worker cooperative. This could be formal, informal, or semi-formal waste worker cooperatives. And the third is really municipal governments that um, receive support in achieving their local targets and boosting development indices. Um, and just to maybe sort of visualize the kind of impact that we've been creating and how scalable this model has been. As you can see, when we really started off with this model, we were only able to achieve the impact of about 31 metric tons in the first year. However, 5 years into that, we have actually crossed 30,000 metric tons now. That 30,000 metric tons of low value plastic that has been recovered through plastic credit financing. And of course, when I say plastic credits, there is that fundamental piece that maybe we've not spoken about, but my colleague, from Meta, Kristen will also take that over in much finer detail. I'd like to shed some light on some of our strategic initiatives and thought leadership to move the needle on plastic circularity that Repurpose has been leading. One of the sort of biggest contributions from Repurpose Global in the recent past has been this seminal report, which really looks at the application of outcomes-based financing towards waste prevention. This was not done alone. Of course, we have partners such as Earth Action Upstream and Green Blue in this effort. But really, I think I want to take this opportunity today and dive deeper into some of the findings of this report. Um, again, we all sort of understand the plastic pollution status quo, and it's very evident that in a business as usual scenario, the plastic waste and mismanaged waste is only set to increase. I think the mismanaged waste until 2020, 2040 is only set to double in the next 15 years or so. But if you can look at the graph on the right side, the green line is essentially the recycling capacity over the last 10 years. And the blue line is actually the production of plastic. And you can see that in the last 10 years, plastic production has increased 20 times more rapidly than collection and recycling capacities have. And the problem is very clear that we do not have enough waste management infrastructure. Um, I think within the report, there were three obstacles that were identified that are really hindering the scale up of solutions to mitigate plastic pollution across the world. And of course, these are all sort of global statistics and global, metrics. But of course, Africa is, or any country in the global south, I would say, would reflect similar statistics, if not worse. So this is the first obstacle, which is clearly to create that systems change. There is a funding gap. There is a funding of about 5.2 trillion required until 2040. The second and third obstacles present over here. The second is basically there is the solutions that are present today are very much early stage, and they are mostly dependent on financing from grants, crowdfunding, maybe venture capital and corporate pilots. If not more. And the third obstacle is essentially very much similar to the problem of, you know, finding a job for a new entrant, right? It's to have a job, you want work experience, you need work experience, and to have work experience, you need a job. So it's a similar problem between technical assistance and financial resource deployment, where financial assistance will only be available where technical capacity or the operational excellence is available. But that to achieve that sort of operational excellence, you need the financial backing from investors. So that's essentially where outcomes-based financing comes in. Outcomes-based financing, to maybe just read out the definition, is a financial approach and a modality that ties the payments to the achievement of specific measurable outcomes rather than traditional input-based models. So basically, it's sort of reversing the trend of how services or outcomes are achieved, where the financial incentive is only sort of released after the achievement of the outcomes has been proven. So if you see and look at the spiral, I think that's a great representation of how outcomes-based financing really works, and plastic credits feature as one of the most prominent examples of outcomes-based financing, um, especially in the plastic waste mitigation space. I'll let you all take a look at the spiral for about a few seconds and then move on. Um, yeah. Um, Outside of the report on outcomes-based financing, there were a couple of other strategic initiatives also that we have led. One such example, which I already also mentioned before, is the Innovation Alliance for the Global Plastics Treaty. So at INC1, during the plastic treaty negotiations in Uruguay, we were one of the very few innovators present in the room, and really identified there is a need for that innovator voice to be present in the plastic treaty negotiations. So that's where we started convening, along with the Ocean Cleanup. We started convening the Innovation Alliance for a global plastics treaty, where we have more than 120 members from across the value chain of solutions. So from upstream, midstream, downstream, solutions, we have innovators from across the value chain of plastics life cycle, and the ultimate goal is to promote the role of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship in the plastics treaty, and accelerate systems change across the entire plastic pollution life cycle from source to sea. And one of the sort of, I will not go into much detail about this, but one of the biggest roles that we identified as the Innovation Alliance also was that the outcomes-based financing has a massive role to play, not just in the treaty negotiations or not just in the treaty text, but also it can help achieve or amalgamate corporate targets and treaty targets to actually form part of the country contributions. And finally, I think, again, without going into much details about this, Repurpose also recently launched a prototype fund, which is a $1 million fund to sort of leverage outcomes-based financing, the same kind of work that we've been doing for plastic credits, but utilizing that model for more upstream interventions. And this is where we are looking at solutions that will be able to help us scale, reuse and refill solutions in a few geographies that we've identified. And finally, I think even though I have not gone into the definition of the fundamentals of plastic credits so far, but Kristen will take that over. I wanted to give you all an overview of where the plastic credit market stands as of today. All of these statistics and the graph are picked up from a recent World Bank report around plastic credits. So there are about 161 projects currently generating plastic credits. This was again, these numbers are from December 2023. So of course, I feel like the numbers have increased significantly since then. There are about 75,000 or over roughly 76,000 metric tons of plastic recovery that has been facilitated through plastic credit financing. And as of the plastic credits that are present today or have been generated as of today, about $10 million can be mobilized through that. And the estimations from the World Bank are that this sector can actually get to or facilitate the financing of about $30 million annually over the next 5 years. And with that, I will hand it over to Kristen to take it over and take us through the fundamentals of the Vera Plastic program and plastic credits.
Wonderful. I believe I've started sharing my screen and I can just pick up from here, being aware that I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So for any that don't know Vera, we are a nonprofit standard setter. We operate a variety of standards programs for climate action and sustainable development. But the one I'll be speaking about today is our plastic waste reduction standard, or our plastic program. And I'll share more about how that allows eligible projects to issue plastic credits. But first, I want to talk about what actually is a plastic credit, because I know some of you, this could be somewhat new of a concept. A plastic credit represents 1 ton of additional plastic waste that's been collected or recycled based on certain requirements. And this investment mechanism can help finance plastic waste collection and recycling, strengthen waste management, and also generate recycled feedstock that is needed to replace virgin plastic. So when we talk about Vera's plastic program, we like to refer to our plastic standard itself, because this is where, as a standard setter, our core operations lie. We set the requirements for what a project has to do to be eligible for a plastic credit. And then those projects that have operated, shown how they are conformant with our requirements, are able to issue plastic credits. And our program issues 2 different types: a waste collection credit, which would represent 1 ton of waste that's been collected, or a waste recycling credit for 1 ton of waste that's been recycled. And I know sometimes it's a little hard to understand all the different players. So I like to use this graphic. Again, Vera as the standard setter, we're really just the rule writers and the registry operators. But it's the projects on the ground, for example, Repurpose, that are doing or partnering with the local organizations to design collection and recycling interventions. And if they want to issue plastic credits with our program, they have to show how they're meeting all of our relevant requirements, get their conformance to those requirements audited by an independent third party, and then following that audit and a review by Vera, if we approve the project to issue plastic credits, then we will issue them on our Vera registry, which ensures transparency about those credits. And then businesses or other organizations can purchase them as a means of making credible finance and then getting finance back to those waste collection or recycling projects. When we talk about our requirements, we have the plastic standard as well as two specific methodologies that are specific to the activity. So where the plastic standard sets the overarching requirements, the methodologies go into the specific details for how to monitor a collection activity or a recycling activity, what the specific eligibility criteria are, etc. But more broadly, I'll highlight a few of the, I think, most relevant parts of our requirements. The standards are globally applicable, which in turn allows for some uniformity in the way that these outcomes are measured across projects around the world. Somebody knows that if a project is certified with Vera, it means that the project is additional. So they are doing something above the baseline scenario or what would have happened in the absence of the project. It means that the project is meeting important social and environmental safeguards that provide for, fair wages, health and safety, protective equipment, healthy air, soil, and water quality, etc. And the project has been third-party audited, and that gives people assurance to know, what the outcome behind that plastic credit actually is. And I haven't talked too much about the actual activities, so I'll touch on the scope of our program briefly. Projects that are collecting or recycling any of the 7 types of plastic, as well as composite materials that contain plastic, are potentially eligible. And I've listed a few examples of activities. This could include anything from, collection projects that are working with waste pickers to municipal or private waste collection infrastructure development, as well as the institution of mechanical or potentially chemical recycling projects, depending on the criteria. There are over 50 projects that are in the process of registering with our program around the world, with 18 of those actually registered, which just really demonstrates the global breadth of our program's impact and the potential for plastic credits. And because everyone's interested in how credits can help mobilize finance, we know that, effective implementation of global and national policies hinges on the availability of adequate, predictable, and accessible sustainable finance. And that's where having a program or plastic credits can help unlock some of this finance through a variety of sources. So that could be through voluntary contributions. That could be through EPR, which I know we'll maybe touch on more in the panel. It could be through other combination with other blended finance mechanisms like outcomes-based bonds or policy-based loans. But by having this plastic credit unit or results-based finance mechanism that underlies or works together with these, it provides assurance about the outcomes. And just being cognizant of time, before we get into the panel, I wanted to touch a little bit on how we think plastic how plastic credits can actually support EPR schemes. Some governments might consider including provisions for plastic credits within their national EPR schemes as one of the pathways for meeting compliance. And the advantage of this is that it allows those obligated entities to connect with a ready pool of plastic waste collection and recycling projects to meet their specific goals around collection or recycling. Of course, this then helps direct funding to the projects in the region that need the finance most urgently, while also reducing some of the government's administrative burden associated with monitoring and verifying the impact of some of these EPR activities. And then in turn, it enables improved livelihoods and health and safety practices for those involved in the projects, all while maintaining the uniformity in the measurement and comparison of project outcomes. So we just ran through a lot of information, but hopefully everyone has a bit of a primer on plastic credits. And I think this is my time to hand it back over to Varun to lead us in the panel discussion.
So, thank you so much for that, Kristen. I think I realized just after finishing my talk that I took way much time. But I think we'll keep it quick from here. I'll quickly introduce the panel, the esteemed panelists, starting with Mr. Sandeep Men, who's the partner and head of private enterprises at KPMG East Africa. We also have with us Davina Inge, who's the program manager at the Flip Floppy project in Kenya, and Miss Charlotte Obado, who's the group sustainability manager at the Kenya Commercial Bank, and of course Christy Linscott, who we all already know, who's the manager for plastics policy and markets at FED. I think without any further ado, I will kick into the first question for the panel, and at least the first question is a blanket question open for everyone. I think we can go in the same order as starting with Mr. Sandeep, followed by Davina, Charlotte, and then Kristen. The question is more so asking about your opinion on what is the most significant opportunity that you identify from innovative financing instruments such as plastic credits, and especially in the East African context. I'll hand it over to Mr. Sandeep from there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Varun, and good afternoon or good day or good morning, wherever you are joining from. So I think for me, the biggest opportunity here first is access to new capital. Plastic credits do provide that opportunity for you to trade up the credit for new capital and more affordable capital. I know this happens a lot in the carbon credit space, but the plastic credit space, although been here for a while, not much tapped into. So this first presents an opportunity for new financing for the potential companies. I think the other one is really opening to new markets because I don't know if most of us are aware about the new regulations that have come up with CBAM and the deforestation regulations, but this is really closely linked. So it's only a matter of time before European world or the US come up and put up additional regulations for the African continent to sort of comply with before exporting certain goods. So I think for me, this would also be additional compliance that we can be proactive in sort of monetizing for the business, as well as getting into new markets that could potentially be sort of restricted if we do not comply with certain regulations. And finally is really around the circular economic growth as well. Over and above incentivizing, using these plastic credits as incentives, I think we'll be ready when the extended producer responsibility regulations come out. We all know that there is a Solid Waste Management Act in Kenya. The region as well is following suit. The regulations will be the first in East Africa, will be first in Kenya, but the other countries are now far behind. So the regulations are meant to come out sometime this year, which will then sort of give guidance on how the manufacturers are meant to track, and I think we had these sessions before, on how they're meant to track the the plastics that they produce or the waste that they produce for recycling purposes. So for me, the opportunity is to act fast and to monetize in order for us to get into new markets. Back to you, Warren.
Maybe we'll just pass it on to Davina to take it over from there.
Thank you. My name is Davina, and I'm here representing the Flip Floppy project. For those who don't know, we're a community-based organization based in the Lamu Archipelago, which is north of Mombasa towards Somalia. And what we're doing through SMEP funding, thank you, SMEP, is we're looking at creating circular and economic models for small islands and other shoreline communities that are dealing with this problem of plastic pollution and marine plastic pollution. And we do it through a holistic model that looks at recovery, but also scientific research, training, policy, boat building, and enterprise. And if you look outside at the end of this session, you can see some of the amazing products that we're creating through marine plastic. Feel free to sit and take pictures and share. But when you look at a place like Lamu, with limited waste management infrastructure, and it's the same in many places around the world. They're not only tasked with dealing with their own municipal waste, but everything that's coming in with the ocean. And it's not just oceans that are dealing with this, but lake communities and river basin communities. And no one is responsible in this case. And there's no financing available. And what Plastic Credits has provided us and can provide others is the opportunity to fund the recovery of waste that are in these critical ecosystems where there's no one, there's no infrastructure, there's no financing that would be possible to support this. Yeah, that is my input for this question.
Charlotte, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So again, my name is Charlotte Ludi, the Group Sustainability Manager within KCB Bank. And so what I would want to say about our role, especially as financial institution within the space of waste management. As a bank, we have been very intentional about financing the green space, and that is where waste management actually falls within that particular space. And we have seen clients whereby, by the end of the day, some of the waste that they are producing, of course, is quite a big amount, and so that means that there is really, of course, you can already see the need within various spaces on the need to just finance, the waste that they are getting at the end of the day. So we have been able to finance these particular clients. We have several clients who are doing very well in regards to just turn some of the waste into products that they can use. People within the sugar sector, people within the steel sector, we have already been seeing those particular cases. As a bank, I think we have also incorporated some of the EPR regulations, whereby even as guided within the IFC performance standard, with performance standard 3, it normally looks into resource efficiency and even just pollution, the aspect of pollution. So what are we doing in regards to that to just make sure that our clients are actually complying with that particular performance standard? So we have incorporated that, and even whenever we engage with our clients, to just make sure that whenever they are doing business, how are they managing their waste at the end of the day? So for us, it has been quite key. I know we need to be more intentional also as financial sector to just give more within this particular space, because we are still operating with the same with the same rates, but there's still more that can be done, especially for our clients who are coming up with very great solutions, innovative solutions for this particular space. So there is definitely more that can be done as within the financial sector, and great to have this conversation.
And I think it's time for me to share some of my thoughts. I'll keep them brief. I think the real advantage or opportunity for credits as an innovative finance mechanism is, we know for any financiers, investors, they want assurance as to the results that their investments will yield. And plastic credits allow for this objective way of measuring the collection or recycling impact of an investment, while at the same time supporting really locally locally specific interventions. So we know that plastic waste management needs across East Africa, across the world, are going to vary by locale. But with something like a plastic credit, you can bring some standardization to the way the outcomes are measured while still allowing the flexibility for the finance to get to a variety of places and interventions depending on local community needs. And then the global uniformity just enables versatility in the way the actual credit can be used or combined with other solutions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, those are great insights. And definitely, I think I echo, I'd like to echo all of the points you have made. But yeah, maybe moving on to the next question, which is actually pointed towards Mr. Sandeep. Mr. Sandeep, if you can maybe elaborate on what you foresee as the role for an advisory firm such as KPMG East Africa to play in the successful scaling of plastic credits market? And what really do you think is KPMG's sort of value addition towards sort of progressing the um, plastic credits market? And I understand it's a little bit more, it's a little broader for you than just the plastic credits market. It's about environmental outcomes. But of course, KPMG has been investing a lot in the space, in the sustainability space. So I would like to learn from you about that.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. So KPMG globally has invested billions of dollars around sustainability, which would be learnings, new technology, resources across the globe. And KPMG East Africa has really tapped into that, as part of the investment that the global firm has made. The things that we're doing really that are dear to or close to my heart personally is really around policy changes and advocacy. So you must have seen the carbon regulations 2024. Not many of us are aware that they are there. And similarly, there will be the extended producer responsibility regulations. They're already in draft. They will be undergoing public participation very soon. So I would encourage us all to keep a lookout on some of the key pages, social media pages, for such regulations when they do come out, because public participation is one way to control on how we see the outcome. If we do not participate, then we will be left with the outcome that the government decides that is going to enforce. So public participation is something that Warren KPMG does really well in East Africa and across globally. So that's one thing that we do assist our clients with, as well as the wider, public. And then the other one that's very important, I think where Kristen mentioned it, is really around the measurement element. So plastic credits are more tangible. It is tangible. It is easier to measure. So KPMG does get involved in sort of the measurement element and then does provide assurance services. So you have the model. In the event you've already got it measured by someone else, we will come in and say, yes, this actually works, or this is authentic and can be used. And I think more importantly is really facilitating stakeholder collaboration or meetings. So which people, the way Takataka and Nimali has done this today, is bring together different stakeholders in this space to have this really important conversation, and how can we progress? So policy changes are really important, and that goes across East Africa and beyond, not just Kenya. And the final one is really around what was mentioned in terms of the finances. So a lot of Kenya actually issued a green bond. I think we are all aware about that. The uptake was very low. And the reason for that is because of the stringent requirements to then subscribe to green bonds. It is not the way you'll do a normal infrastructure bond either. So some of these measures have been put in place for good reason, but I think if you're to access the cheaper financing, because green financing is cheaper than traditional financing, then even working with banks and or creating financial models for investors, we did talk about return. So there are certain companies that we're working with to create a financial model to see if they do get green financing, how does it impact if they do get they do generate carbon or plastic credits. How can they monetize? And is it worth it? Because one of the key things here is I can collect, I can recycle, but how do I monetize? How much is it going to cost me to then go through the entire process and then eventually sell? Remember, unlike the carbon market, the plastic credits are easier to sell. And by the way, they do fetch a far better price than a carbon credit. So how do I monetize that? So does it make sense to me from an investment before I then start seeing how do I monetize the same? So I think we do assist around that as well. So Warren, a lot of support that we give stakeholders at different stages. It could be policy, it could be measurement, it could be those very much needed assurance services. And eventually, I think for me, the closest one is really the return on capital. Is it worth it? Does it make sense? And I think that's the critical question that the African market asks. And remember, we are not the largest contributors. I think Nigeria does come very close to a very large contributor of plastic pollution and possibly DRC. But generally, even if you look at climate, Africa is not on the forefront, but yet we suffer the most because of climate change. So it is really being proactive, and that's what KPMG does in terms of supporting different stakeholders. Back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, you mentioned green financing a couple of times, and that could be a great segue. I could turn towards Charlotte actually, and I know that the Kenya Commercial Bank has committed to transition at least 25% of its loan portfolio to green projects by 2025, which is just next year. Um, what do you think, Charlotte, are some strategies that the bank can envision or to sort of incentivize investment in projects that support waste management and recycling infrastructure, especially in East Africa? And taking a broader regional approach, and I don't know if that even fits under the scope of the Kenya Commercial Bank, but really is, and I'm also curious to know if plastic credits has a role to play in this.
Yeah, thank you for that, Varun. And even as I did mention within my initial statement, yes, the bank is very keen on that space. But what we have also seen, as much as we are very intentional about growing our loan portfolio, our green loan portfolio, we have also seen the uptake being in particular sectors. So the uptake has been very strong in areas such as the renewable energy within the energy efficiency. The area of plastic management, waste plastic management has been very low. The uptake has been very low, but we have seen very strong uptake even in waste management generally. The one conversation that we have also had within the space of blue economy, whereby we're just looking at doing cleanups for our habitats, especially the oceans, and that means now addressing the aspect of plastic management within the blue economy space. Therefore, then that means having conversations with the national government, because they are actually the owners of those particular spaces, and we have also had conversations with the societies who are now who are closely located within spaces within that will be affected in regards to plastic in terms of the blue economy space. But what we have been able to see very strongly is that the kind of capital expected within these particular spaces are aspects such as grants, and I'm glad that you even mentioned this. So we have seen the uptake of this financing only being in regards to grants. So we are yet to see a situation whereby the conversation of plastic waste management has been turned into something that the return on investment is very clear, especially to banks, so that they are comfortable going to finance those particular areas. But just to also mention, there is still appetite in regards to some of our clients, and I did even mention this at the beginning, there is very great appetite that we have seen in regards to waste management, whereby some clients who have come up with very great solutions, and they are able to even just prove that based on, let's say, this waste that we are producing, we are able to produce this other product, and this can be sold to the other community. So we have been able to see, let's say, for instance, a sector like the sugarcane sector, for instance, whereby their end product, which is bagasse, can be easily turned to briquettes, and that is what is actually being sold as renewable energy to the communities around. So there are those innovative solutions that the banker has actually stepped in and financed. It's just a matter of how a client will be able to package it, prove that this particular product or even this plastic waste management that they do have in place is actually going to make to have a return on investment at the end of the day, and that is something that the bank would easily come in and finance. So I just wanted to just mention that particular aspect, even the challenges from the financial sector that the challenges that we are facing from the financial sector, even as much as we are really trying to finance this particular space. Back to you, Varun.
Thank you so much, and yeah, I think definitely it's a challenging um, line from here for everyone, not just I mean, of course, for financial institutions, but also I think project developers and standard setters, and there is so much more innovation that could be unlocked through additional financing and looking at more upstream applications as well. I know for a fact that the World Bank also recently released a RFP for for upstream methodologies for credits, which could actually incentivize reduction of plastic usage across a brand's value chain or a company's value chain. But not just looking at the downstream interventions. I think, yeah, moving on to the next question, which is pointed towards Davina. Yeah, Flip-Floppy has been, you've had some experience with plastic credits. What would you say are the most critical factors that ensure community-based waste collection initiatives can actually benefit from such mechanisms? And I think I'll also add on a smaller question to that, which is really trying to learn about what kind of innovations or expanded services have you really seen through such financing, but also looking at any drawbacks that you've experienced in your experience with plastic credits so far. Sorry, that's a very long question, but yeah.
Thank you, Varun. So I think you've seen, like, through the presentation and the discussions, that traceability is really at the heart of plastic credits. It's a good thing. I mean, it's needed, traceability, but there's a thin line between, like, traceability being integrated into your operations versus traceability running your operations. And that's what we've experienced as a community-based organization. During this extended pilot that we've had on plastic credits. So if you can imagine what Lamu is, it's an island. So as an example, PET is a polymer that we have a lot of challenges with. So we have to take it to Mombasa, to Nairobi for it to be recycled. For it to get there, it has to go on a boat first and then on a truck. So we really need scale to be able to make that sustainable. Right now, it's at a loss. But on the other hand, we are within a program that works within really strict timelines, reporting timelines, financial timelines, transport timelines, which are not always feasible for community-based organizations. So what is really critical is flexibility when working at a local level, because without it, then you don't really take into account the constraints that these organizations work within. The second is capacity building. So another core part of plastic credits is the amount of data that is required to be able to verify and to audit that actually all of this is true, that all the plastic that you said is being collected is actually being collected, and it's really critical. On the side of the community-based organization, especially if they're small, this is quite intensive capacity-wise. It's not usually an ingrained skill within many organizations. So for an example, just to collect like a bottle of plastic, you need logs, you need receipting, you need invoices, you need supply agreements, you need geomap photos. Again, you understand the need, but the capacity to do so is quite different. What we get from the plastic credit goes directly to the waste collector. So the investment that we've made into capacity has been our own. The time has been our own. In terms of licenses, which are also needed, you saw that what's critical is like social and environmental safeguards. That means OSHA licenses, environmental audits, health and safety training, etc., etc. The list is quite long. For many community-based organizations, like just one NEMA license is a few thousand shillings, and you can imagine there's 20 needed. And many community-based organizations do not have the capacity to have all of these licenses. Again, we're lucky we have funding that has given us the capacity, that has given us money for licenses. But if you really want to reach community-based organizations, you need to facilitate the capacity building, and you need to facilitate all the licenses required if you want to actually reach the local organizations. And then the last thing is accessibility. So if I say, I see my colleague on the screen from KCB. If you say KCB is releasing like a plastic waste management credit scheme today, many people will show up because KCB has a face. As a Kenyan, you know KCB. If you say Repurpose is doing so, there might be a bit more hesitancy, even though Repurpose is doing a lot of amazing work around the globe. So if you want organizations like that to reach the grassroots level, there's a need to put a face to the organization. There's a need to spend time actually on the ground and let people know actually they're quite accessible. If you reach out to them, they will reply. Otherwise, people might be afraid that this is something for large organizations. I think there was a sub question on if I've seen expanded like programs coming from the credits. At the moment, we're still in the pilot stage, so we haven't yet moved into implementing additional programs, but we have seen some of the other projects under Repurpose supporting PPE, supporting other social programs related to waste pickers. And as we move further with the relationship, I think these are activities we're really interested in. They're things that we do carry out as Flip Floppy because we keep community at the heart of what we do. We do see that Repurpose is quite keen on focusing on community, making sure there's no exploitation, understanding or making sure that the value chain is quite informed about what the plastic credit is, not just at the recycling level, but at the waste picker level as well, which is quite key because, I mean, if you move around Nairobi, they're informed waste pickers doing quite well selling plastic, and the others who are quite uninformed and being exploited by the same organizations who are buying well from a different location. So that focus on community, keeping them informed, is something that we have seen and something that we hope to grow together with Repurpose moving forward.
Thank you so much. And I would say there's actually very much valuable information, maybe feedback, just not for Repurpose, I think, but for the broader market, and things to learn from, things to improve upon. Maybe I'll just turn towards and my last question towards a specific panelist, which is the Christian, and looking at the linkages between or where do you see a role for plastic credits to complement extended producer responsibility? And maybe I'll let you weigh in on what also there might be some pitfalls that you think must be avoided in aligning both of these mechanisms, because one's a voluntary mechanism, the other is a compliance mechanism. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I think extended producer responsibility, Sandeep has already kind of mentioned it. It's something that many countries are exploring as a way of channeling more finance to their waste management infrastructure and reducing plastic leakage. Where we think credits can complement EPR is kind of in a variety of ways. You know, before EPR is actually at a stage where it's been developed or drafted, it's past the public consultation, etc. We know that there's an immediate need now for finance to get to this. So that's where credits in kind of the pure voluntary sense, where a company might be purchasing them to meet their own targets or commitments, this could be really useful in making sure that capital is still getting to that infrastructure. Because a huge problem with EPR is we know it's a lot of work to set it up, but especially in like emerging markets or developing economies, there's often a really big infrastructure deficit. So even once you get EPR going, if you start receiving program funds, if you don't have the infrastructure to collect and recycle, there's not really the way to deploy those funds. So if you're able to use plastic credits in kind of a voluntary context to help scale that infrastructure while policy is being developed, it just makes the implementation and hopefully impact that you will see, it makes it infinitely quicker to see. Now, how could credits then work once within compliance once implemented? We know that some, governments, there's a few examples in Southeast Asia where they have allowed for credits to be used as a means of complying with EPR regulations. So a company might choose to go through a producer responsibility organization, or they might choose to purchase credits to meet the targets that they are obligated to meet. And I think that is probably the most glaring opportunity for credits, and could really complement compliance systems in regulatory contexts. And maybe just to briefly touch on the pitfalls, I do think that the key piece is credits aren't going to prescribe a specific route for any government. We know that that is going to be very dependent on the national context. So in that sense, I think we can avoid a one-size-fits-all approach, which is sometimes a pitfall in designing policy. But I think the only thing to recognize, and maybe something that some people ask sometimes, is, how does credits and EPR, are there ever risks of double counting? And I think this is an important thing to keep in mind. But from our perspective, monitoring systems need, whether for EPR alone or plastic credits, they need to be robust enough that there is that transparency in monitoring so that there is no double counting. And that's something we'll continue to build on. But hopefully that helped answer and touch on some of your questions.
Varun, we have
That's
about
actually
4 minutes.
Yeah,
You have about
sure.
4 minutes.
Maybe I will just do a quick last round, which cannot be maybe not full answers, but let's just take keywords from all of our panelists. And the question is more to do with where do you think the biggest challenges are, or where do you think the biggest opportunities for improvement in the plastic credit market are? Really looking at what is needed to drive this sector forward and actually help achieve the outcomes that we are actually aiming for, without any risk or accountability, greenwashing, any of those sort of concepts. Maybe just a couple of keywords from each one of you, and then we can wrap it up from there. We can go in the same order, I think. Sandeep, Davina, Charlotte, and then Christian.
Right, thank you. So I think for me, the key challenge is really going to be, again, around policy and aligning that. So across the East Africa and African jurisdiction, we have a number of policies around different initiatives around sustainability. So you have a different act, Sustainable Management Act, you have the Waste Management Act, you have carbon regulations, you have a number of different pieces of legislations. Now we've heard about the extended producer responsibility regulations. So I think for me, all that needs to be, it's too much and all over the place. So that needs to be aligned. I think that would be really easing into doing business. You mentioned the different challenges, and you experienced the 20 licenses that you need to get from one regulator like NEMA. So I think for me, in order for us to take advantage of that, that would be one of the main obstacles to overcome. But in looking at the opportunity, indeed, as I mentioned before, this is going to be a great way to scale up. If a company or someone can monetize the credit, it can be used as additional capital that you have not seen in your business before, and can help you and your business be more sustainable. I think that's it for me, Warren. Back to you, or to Devina.
Thank you. I see just 3 points I'd like to mention briefly. The first challenge I would say is the lack of waste managed infrastructure, and in some places lack of infrastructure altogether, road networks, etc., which makes recovery really expensive, not just for plastic, for organics and the other waste streams. What this means then is the credit or the subsidy you receive, it really doesn't stretch so far because you're incurring costs, which if you're in a more developed nation, then those costs would be much lower. So there is opportunity for funding into infrastructure to reduce that. But what is also critical in terms of policy then is reduction policy, because when you look at waste streams, we're wading through a lot of unnecessary plastic, unrecyclable plastic, which has no use for the circular economy that we've all been touting today. And we've seen Kenya at the national level address this through the single-use ban and the ban of single-use plastics in protected areas. Tomorrow there's a stakeholder workshop looking at the EAC ban on single-use plastics, the proposed ban, which I encourage you to attend. And then at the international level, we look at the plastics treaty. So that's also a challenge, but also an opportunity if we do want plastic credits to solve the plastic pollution problem. And lastly, what I look as a challenge, but also an opportunity is viewing what has happened in the carbon markets. So we've seen carbon credits as Africans specifically, the opportunities posed by carbon credits, but also we're hyper aware of all the issues that have come with carbon credits, especially social justice issues. And that has brought a lot of questions around the legitimacy of these credits, which we don't want with the plastic credit industry. And the only way for that to happen is if there's more transparency. So if you're talking about a plastic credit, how much is being raised? Excuse me. From the dollar that's being raised, how much is going to the community? How much plastic is that recovering? If we get producers as funding the plastic credits model, are they actually putting effort and finance behind these plastic credits, or is a lot of their focus still on increasing production and just paying big bonuses to their executive management? So if we do want the plastic credits industry to solve the problem that we're all struggling with, there is an opportunity for transparency.
Okay, I think I'm going next. So some of the challenges that I think we have seen, and what we can be able to, how we can be able to just address that. One is to just be able to have bankable projects within the plastic waste sector, and for that we need, even in the bank we have moved away from just looking at assets as collaterals that we can work with, but then nowadays even the bank is very we can have conversations based on the cash flows, but then even despite that despite that particular aspect, we are still not seeing bankable projects that are coming in within that particular space. So we really need to make sure that the projects that we are of course bringing on to the bank side for financing are of course bankable projects. Secondly, there's also the aspect of knowledge awareness, and we may be having this conversation here in regards to plastic credits, but then is this information even beyond how far is this information getting, and how far is it going even beyond this particular room? So we need to also just do our part. As financial institutions, we keep on having these conversations with our clients. We have had conversations even in regards to extended producer responsibility and how they need to also just be very responsible of their own waste from their end. But there's need for more associations, and I'm glad for such sessions that are available for people to just attend and even get more information. But then there's need for more associations to just come in and share this information even to other wider audiences. So for me, those are the two main areas that we really need to look into, more bankable projects within this particular space, and also more knowledge awareness in that particular sector. So back to you.
And I'll keep mine very brief. I think we know that the finance challenge in itself is pretty, hopefully not insurmountable, but large. So I think we just need to look to as many tools as we have available as possible, especially those that already exist. And that's where I think plastic credits can come in to help really scale the level of finance going to collection and recycling activities. And I just emphasize it's just one of many tools, there's not going to be one single solution to plastic pollution, but I think we should leverage as many in the toolbox today as we have so that we can reduce that plastic leakage.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for your insightful comments on that. And with that, I know we're over time, but the audience is still sort of here, so very good to see the interest. Very grateful for that. And thanks once again to all the panelists for your time, for all the audience, people in the audience, I think. Um, just my closing remarks are it's still new. The sector is still new. We still need a lot more work going into to sort of improve the market and drive it forward, and really achieve environmental and social outcomes out of this. Yeah, I think that there is so much more scope for partnerships across the entire landscape globally. So, thank you so much. I will close this session with that, unless there are
All right.
pieces
Thank
that
you
will
so
conclude.
much. Yes. Thank you so much, Varun. Actually, Varun, where are you and what time is it? We just want to appreciate that you have really sacrificed.
I'm in New York currently, so it's about 10 a.m. for me now. But it's regular working hours, nothing outside of that. Thank you so much. Same for Kristen.
All
I think
right.
she's in Washington, D.C.
Joshua, we wanted to laugh at that because you've omitted it. We want to see them as they're saying this. What about Kristen?
I am also in the Eastern time zone in North America. I'm in Washington, D.C. So normal time for me. I know it's getting later in your day and you've had a whole full day of sessions. So I appreciate the engagement.
Shala?
I am right here in Kenya, so same time zone.
I was
Yeah.
just checking. Okay.
Yeah,
Same as
yeah.
indeed, and the panelists right here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. We're headed out for some cocktails. Just enjoy yours at home. All the best.
Yes. Thank you so much. We still need some more
Thank you.
coffee
Thank you
now.
so much.
Thanks. You too.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that marks end of session one. And because we have some gifts for the ones who were present, the others we shall send them. I don't know how, but I would like to request that we hand them in. And Mary, if you could kindly come forward so that at least we can give our present panelists some of this gift hampers, courtesy of Bio. Rosalind, this picture is not complete without you, so please come by as well. So there you go. Yes, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time. Well, as you already had, we have some cocktails immediately after this, just for us to really marinate on the conversations that were there. So there you go. Please look at that person so that at least the photos will be as crispy. Excellent.